Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, AirspeedPrime here with my next channel update video. With no episode of Boruto today or chapter of The Promised Neverland, I thought that this was a good opportunity to place this video here, especially given that the Clone Wars is ending tomorrow, so just talk about, kind of where things are on the channel in terms of my regular series and so on. So let's start off with just the fact that about a week ago, I think I hit over 6,000 subscribers on the channel, which was another cool milestone to hit. Admittedly, the second I hit 5,000 subscribers, it was more of like, oh, of course, I'm aiming for 10,000 from here on out. But still, hitting 6,000 was definitely a cool one to hit. It shows the kind of slow but steady growth of the channel consistently. In basically the entire history of the channel, I've never really had a sudden surge in subscribers or popularity. The couple of videos that I've done that have kind of gone viral haven't really necessarily led to an increase in subscriber count necessarily. For anyone wondering, the two videos on my channel that kind of have gone a little bit more viral and have I think over 1 million views and then over 500,000 views are the two videos I did covering the family trees of Avatar and Korra, and they, as much as they're a big part of why I kind of continue to sort of actually make money every month on YouTube, they haven't really led to a growth in subscribers. So, that's just YouTube and the way it works. But yeah, it's cool to see the channel still continue to grow. I think, of course, very much is dependent on the content, which has been a lot slower these last few years. Hopefully we can pick up again, and especially when the Netflix show comes out, I'm very much hoping that there'll be a surge in interest for Avatar. Even as of course the Avatar comes back onto Netflix in America, I'm hoping that that can happen as well. So I kind of have maybe some ideas kind of planned for when May 15th hits and it comes back to Netflix America, just to do some kind of more interesting things. But that's just I suppose just quick where the channel is, subscriber count, that sort of stuff. But the first thing I want to talk about here is, I suppose, the manga content on the channel. Of course, you guys know I do Boruto, the monthly chapters when they come out, as well as the Promised Neverland weekly chapters. So with Boruto, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any delays. It seems like it's just going to come out monthly as expected, and that format arguably suits the situation that we have right now while we're still dealing with the virus. And I don't really foresee delays necessarily, unless the manga requires a lot of people to work on it and stuff like that. It seems like for the most part they're managing that fairly well, and I haven't really heard anything about most of the Shonen Jump stuff being too badly affected by this. Obviously, the reason The Promised Neverland was off for about a month was because, one, I think there was a planned week. Was it Golden Week? I'm not sure. Either way, a planned week where Shonen Jump is usually off, as well as 1 week where everything was off because of the virus. And then I think The Promised Neverland was just on break for a week or two. I guess maybe to plan out further, the rest of the story, given that it seems like we're going into either the very end of the story or potentially the final arc. Still kind of unclear on that. The Promised Neverland, every chapter you go back and forth on this could end in 5 chapters to oh no, they could do another 20-30 chapter arc here depending on where they're going. But either way, we know we're towards the end. I think within the next year or so I can definitely see The Promised Neverland wrapping up, and that means that will be another series on my channel sort of gone. And I've really enjoyed doing the weekly manga chapter series. It's been it suits the style of content that I do perfectly, to have that consistent every week without, apart from a couple of breaks that Shonen Jump takes every year. There is a chapter, something for me to review and get into, and The Promised Neverland is sort of the perfect type of series to discuss, because there's depth to the character arcs, the world building and stuff like that, and it all makes for, I think, very discussion worthy content. And so that means that I actually really want to continue to do a weekly manga chapter review series. So when The Promised Neverland comes to an end, I do want to swap over and start doing another series. I'm still deciding on what exactly that should be. Of course, I'm not going to decide anytime soon. That'll be more of a thing to decide exactly on closer to when we actually know The Promised Neverland is going to be wrapping up. Right now, I'm leaning towards either Haikyuu or One Piece as being the manga that I would kind of switch over to reviewing. I'd lean more in the direction of Haikyuu right now, just because I feel it's probably the other series in Shonen Jump that I'm like the most like invested in, and I can feel I can actually like discuss effectively. One Piece seems like it would be the obvious one. It's just that like that series is like so wide in scope. It's been going for so many years, that I'm kind of like I almost feel like do I know enough about One Piece to even be able to review it effectively? I'm probably just underestimating myself there on that one, and I probably would be fine once I got into it, because that's the way it usually works when you do these type of reviews. That like when you actually start doing it week to week, all the information just starts being very easily able to kind of refer to. And that I really like One Piece, and it would be, I think, cool to get into it in that way, but I'm not quite sure about it. Again, that's one of those things where maybe as we get towards the end of The Promised Neverland, I'll start doing sort of like kind of test reviews, like I'll just randomly review a chapter of Haikyuu or a chapter of One Piece or whatever, and just see which one seems like there's more popularity behind, which one works that little bit better. But let me know in the comments your thoughts. Are there other series that you think that I should do, or which would be your preference for One Piece or Haikyuu for me to do? But yeah, like I said, I think The Promised Neverland is still going to go for probably, I'd guess, I'd say at least probably like 15-20 more chapters. I think they will do something with the human world, and it won't just sort of end very quickly within the next like 5-10. But I'm not sure. Again, I don't really know. It's all over the place in terms of like knowing exactly where the ending will be. Boruto, I'm really enjoying reviewing that month to month. I really wish it was a weekly, but the creators seem to be working. They seem to be liking the monthly style, and ultimately it's interesting enough now that they've hit, I think, a very strong point in the story. And it's definitely one of the more popular series on my channel, that knowing that, when I put that video up, it's going to get like a good amount more views than a lot of the other videos I put out on my channel. So, that's definitely something I really do enjoy doing. So that, of course, is going to continue. Same with the Boruto anime. I'll continue to review that once it comes back. It's obviously on break now. I think it's indefinitely until the virus looks like it's kind of calming down over there. And that's the same with a lot of the other anime that like stuff has been delayed. Like, of course, the big one for me, Sword Art Online, the last season of Alicization. So looking forward to reviewing that, because so much of that content I think is going to work so well in the anime. Very unfortunate that, weeks before it was about to start, they had to push it back until, June or July. We're still a bunch of weeks away from it, but when it comes back, I will definitely be reviewing it. The same goes for like most of the anime at this point. A lot of it is beginning to sort of wind sort of down as we kind of have to kind of stop production on a lot of that stuff. But it'll come back. The same goes for like The Promised Neverland. When the anime for that comes back, I'll be reviewing it. Same goes for Attack on Titan with the. Did they announce it? Like, this is meant to be like the final season, I think. So yeah, the last stuff with the Attack on Titan, I'm excited to see that, because with the Attack on Titan, I don't read the manga, so that's really good stuff for me. So that's that. I suppose we'll move into Star Wars stuff now. As I said at the start, the Clone Wars is ending tomorrow. May the 4th is tomorrow. That's when the last episode of the Clone Wars is going to be airing. Season 7, episode 12. And it's going to be a pretty big one. Like, I'll have my review out tomorrow, and then I'll also be doing a video probably like a day or two afterwards, discussing my thoughts on Season 7 overall. And maybe I'll do another video just discussing like, what stuff they might want to come back for, to potentially do like a Season 8 and like a Lost Missions 2 style thing, to just fill in some gaps with arcs and so on. So there'll be at least 2-3 more Clone Wars videos to come out of this for sure. But I think the review is definitely going to be the main thing for that last episode. The show, like 12 years kind of from start to the finale. It's going to be a very, very impactful thing when it happens, and I'm very interested to see exactly how to decide to end it. But the thing is, once the episode airs, then all of a sudden that content that's been there on my channel for the last 12 weeks, that's now gone, and there's not a lot of other Star Wars content really coming out, and that the next book that I've seen that I really want to read is that first High Republic one, just to see what it's like. And I think that's a good few months away. And there's nothing else really kind of going on right now in the franchise until they potentially announce whatever the next animated series is. Because, of course, I don't think many fans really care about Resistance. So it's all about whatever this next one is, whatever it ends up being, whether it's this rumored like Ahsoka Sabine show as we continue on the Rebels plot, which I think would make a lot of sense given how popular Ahsoka has been since her kind of debut this season, and I really want to see them do that. I want to see Disney really make some changes based on what the fandom have really been saying about content recently, of what's happened with the reception to Episode 8, Episode 9, the sequel trilogy in general, the reaction to the announcement of like this project with this creator, this project with this creator. The High Republic thing has even received a lot of backlash. Yet the one thing that hasn't really received backlash is the Clone Wars. And they have to look at that and realize like what it's doing correct that other stuff isn't. Because I think Disney came into the franchise with a very weird perception of like, oh, everyone hates the prequel, so we'll just abandon everything prequel related. And now all of a sudden the thing that's almost like saving them right now is a prequel era thing. So they must be incredibly confused. But I think what they fail to realize is that like the hatred of the prequels is more down to like, the acting wasn't like perfect, rather than the story is bad. I think most people can accept that the story of the prequels is actually good, and what the actual events that happen are super, super memorable. And so having the Clone Wars as a show to adapt all of that and like give more context to it works so well, versus most of the problems with the sequels are just that the core things that make up the sequel trilogy, plot, characters, not a lot of connection to the characters, plot all over the place. You've messed up on so many of the key elements, and about the only thing the prequels did well was like the acting was decent. So they made up for what the prequels did wrong, but then they got everything else kind of wrong. So Star Wars is in a weird position as like they have the Clone Wars and the Mandalorian as like the two things that I think most fans really, really like. And now that they're bringing like Ahsoka into the Mandalorian, that should be great for them, and especially if they can bring Ahsoka back in an animated show to continue on that story, we should be great. And then if they can get the Obi-Wan Kenobi show up and running and get out of all these sort of script issues or whatever they were having, we should be fine. But again, a lot of that's a long way into the future. Nothing's been announced, so it feels like we're going to be in a very sort of like light time for Star Wars for the next kind of couple of months, unless they have an announcement to make kind of relatively soon. So yeah, that's that on the Star Wars front. So let's get into Avatar. So you may have noticed recently on the channel, okay, there's been a few more pieces of news that have come up that I've been able to talk about. Some kind of reprint books announced. Brian put out that interesting Instagram post, and there's been a few other like little things happening here with regards to like, oh, they announced season 2, wave 2 of the action figures and so on. But what's been missing has been, where is the announcements for the other new comics? And I think that's why, for me personally, I felt like there's been barely anything Avatar related to talk about. It's why you may have noticed there's probably not been a lot of Avatar discussion topic videos. It's because I don't like having to kind of re-go over topics over and over and over again. So I prefer to talk about new stuff when it's out there. And unfortunately, it's just the case that there hasn't really been a lot to do. I'd love to speculate more about Katara and the Pirate Silver, but I have nothing else to say about it that I didn't already cover in my speculation video, because it's a book that's relatively limited in scope, and we know so little about it right now. And it's like still ages away. Like what, we're still like 5 months away from that book? Like, and that's the okay. We're still, like I said, 5 months away from that, and there's not a lot else going on. There's a huge gap between Runes of the Empire Part 3 from the end of February all the way into October for that book. And I'm shocked that they've allowed this to happen in the anniversary year, that they're hyping up, Dark Horse are hyping up this year as the anniversary year. And look, I know the virus has kind of come in and potentially has affected things, and they've probably had to push stuff back because of it, but I still think you can do some of the announcements. If you have a core book ready to announce, like, announce it. Get people on your side and realize that you don't just have to do things with the voice actors on Twitch to get people invested. Announcing the next core book would get people just as invested, and that's what we need right now. If there's been any issue with the comics recently, it's just been that, like, there's been this sense of, like, what is the aim of the comics? Like, we've been asking this for years. Like, why are you locked into this format? Why can't you do something different? We still want the story to go forward, but just in a way that feels like it's more open and can be more free to, like, do what it needs to do. Yet, the second you make a change to the format, it's like, we're going back to do this solo book. And it's not necessarily what the fans have been asking for, but it's like, just this weird thing. And, like, look, I'm excited for that Katara book, but I think it is going to be one of those books that just, like, comes out, we read it, it was good, what's next? And it's not going to be this lasting book. And to me, that's what's been so great about going back on the podcast, the last, like, few episodes, to re-review the earlier comics. There's so much depth to all of those comics. The Promise, The Search, The Rift, Smoke and Shadow, which we just did yesterday. There is so much detail in all of those comics. The amount of different plot threads going on, small, big, involving the main characters, the risks in a way that are taken with some of the characters. It feels like they were really doing stuff with them. And what's happened kind of in a way since North and South, probably Runes of the Empire excluded, has felt like a completely different way of doing the comics. And I don't know why they've lost it, basically. What I don't know what's happened, what's gone wrong the last few years, but, like, there hasn't been that same level of, like, a new comics that's come out, like, they're really delving into the characters and stuff like that. And Imbalance, of course, being, I think, the biggest example of, like, missteps for the comics in terms of just not really doing anything with that book. And that's where I think they need to announce stuff. They need to announce the next core book, because we know there is one coming, because, again, the Rachel Roberts interview said that fans of Korra and Avatar will be excited for what's to come. And basically everything that's been announced, I think apart from the reprint of the Korra Book 1 art book, has been an Avatar product. With regards to omnibuses for the Promise and the Search, the library editions, the library edition of the short story collections, there's been no other, like, Korra thing. And I don't think she was referring to the Runes of the Empire library edition, because the question was asked in relation to, like, new content post Runes of the Empire. So why would she just say, you know, you'll be happy to get this book again in a different format? So we're waiting for something. There's at least one book that we're still waiting to be announced, and that is the next Korra one, which, again, we don't know what's happening with that. I don't think there's been a tease in any way about, like, will Michelle Wong be staying on board? Will it still be Mike as the writer? Or is Tim Hedrick going to be the writer going forward? I kind of, in a way, wouldn't mind that. I think maybe that's what we're seeing at this point in time, is that transition point of Mike and Brian are now deeper into work on the live-action Netflix show, and so Tim Hedrick is jumping into his role as sort of being the new overseer of some of this extra material. I think he's a great writer, and he seems to be very aware of, like, the continuity in terms of playing basically the role of Mike and Brian. So I wouldn't have that much of a problem if that was maybe the switch that they were kind of getting towards. I think he's wrote comics before as well, so I don't think it should be too much of an issue. Again, like, it's always like, I'd like Mike and Brian to stay on board, but, you know, if it's slow down the releases to allow them to work on multiple projects, or just get someone else in to do that, I'd much prefer to get someone else in so we have the consistency of releases. So that's, to me, what we're waiting for, to see what the next, like, basically the next era of Avatar comics is, because they've been going for, what, like 8-9 years at this point. And they were great at the start, but they've kind of lost their way a little bit recently. And the newest book announced hasn't been exactly what people want. So they have to deliver with whatever the next books are. And I don't know what they're really doing here. Like, okay, we assume most of Katara the Pirate Silver is done. I think we basically know it is done. So are Peter Wortman and Faith Erin Hicks actually working on an Avatar project right now? Or what? Is there a new creative team working on another Avatar book? What's happening? Because it feels like the Avatar books have just come to a grinding halt. Like, Imbalance was in no way a conclusion to anything. Yet we have Smoke and Shadow left here with like this like beacon of like resolve this plot point, and we're not linking anything back to it. It's really, really weird. So yeah, like Korra comics are in a better position because like we're still in the first. We only had 2. We're still waiting to see what they do next. I think again, everyone wants to go back to the Fire Nation, and that's like a thread. That's a thread with all of the comics. Both in the Avatar comics and the Korra comics, there is a demand from the fans to go back to the Fire Nation, because all the plots in the Avatar comics are basically there, and it's probably the only real place we haven't really seen properly in the Korra time period. So that's why there's the interest to go there, to explore some of those other characters in a better way. Now, the one thing I will say is that coming up, we're just, 2 days away from the release of The Rise of Kyoshi on audiobook. I will have content coming out in relation to that. Again, my CD I don't think is shipped yet, so that might be still like a week or 2 away, covering anything about the CD when that arrives. I will be attempting to get the Audible version on Tuesday when it comes out, and again I will do a video on the audiobook as soon as I can get through it. And once I get through it, I will be doing a little bit more Kyoshi content, because of course we're basically entering what is like the summer of Kyoshi, which is like the audiobook release, the paperback version of Rise of Kyoshi, which I also have ordered. I'll probably will do a video on that just to give people an idea of like, oh, like this is the hardback and the paperback are different, if anyone cares about that. And then of course the big thing we're building towards in July, Shadow of Kyoshi, which looks to be the sort of savior of the year with regards to Avatar content. So that's going to be fantastic when that happens, in that based on last time, we should be pretty much within the next couple of weeks be getting our first excerpt from The Rise of Kyoshi at some point. The Shadow of Kyoshi. So if they're hyping it up in the same way that they did the first book, we're getting close towards that sort of preview type season for what's going on. I may get on to maybe trying to contact the publisher about getting a review copy of Shadow of Kyoshi. I'm not sure if that will happen or not, because I think the main problem with that is probably just going to be that I'm from Ireland, and it seems like there's weird licensing, weird restrictions and stuff like that, and that basically the book technically hasn't been officially released outside of like a few regions, and unless you buy from like a worldwide bookseller, it's not actually available as widely as you think it should be. So I don't know how much that will affect me, but I might try and make that happen, because like I did so much content for the first book. My goal is still to do that again, like once I have the time to do it, which I probably will, I will be doing like chapter reviews like I did for the first book. So regardless of how many chapters there is, I will be doing a video on every chapter and doing it in the same way that I did the first one. I'll do like an initial sort of non-spoiler review, then I'll do my normal content, then a spoiler review, or maybe reverse the order or something like that. Again, we're still a few weeks away from that, but it'll happen. So there is content coming on the channel for sure. I'll do Rise of Kyoshi audiobook content. When my copy of the paperback arrives, I'll do something to show that off a little bit. Shadow of Kyoshi content, 100%, I'll be doing a lot on that. And then I suppose like in the next month or 2 as well, the Korra Funko Pops will be coming out. So once they haven't been delayed or anything like that, I'll be doing stuff on them. Then we're getting into the region where like the big Aang statue, which I do plan to order, is going to be coming out. So there's stuff, like there is other stuff happening at this point. It's just a little bit frustrating. And like that's for forgetting almost about the Promise Omnibus, which I will be getting to show off, and stuff like that. I'll be doing it. Like, even though it's not the most exciting content because it's just reprint books, I will be getting them to review them, because that's sort of like the bread and butter of my channel, basically, is doing the sort of product reviews, so you guys know what all the new releases are about. But yeah, I think that's most of it. I'm probably forgetting some piece of content that I do here or there. Like, I do occasional videos on Patreon if you do become a patron there to support the channel. I'll probably have one or two coming within the next few weeks now that they have a little bit more time. And so the final thing to talk about is going back to the Avatar content, is basically most of the Avatar content I've put out in the last few weeks, which has been the episode, the fan episode commentary series I've been doing for Avatar and Korra. Now, I will be continuing to do that over the next couple of weeks. It just won't be as like sort of many releases per week as it has been up to now. It's been like really like 4 or 5 a week up to now. That'll be more going down to maybe like 2, sometimes 3 as we go forward, because again, I don't want to end up with this thing being like I've done every single episode, but I do want it to sort of be a slow and steady thing, maybe getting towards doing that. So, you know, I have the other one I have recorded is the Republic City Hustle one. That'll be released probably Tuesday, because again, Clone Wars review tomorrow. So Tuesday for the next one, and then I have to decide on what the next kind of batch of them, based on choices that you guys have submitted, is going to be. But just know that like the plan is from here on out to only put out like 2-3 a week, more than likely more like 2, so I have time to maybe plan other types of videos as well. But yeah, I think that's most of the video. So yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on what I had to say here. I suppose the main things being, like I said at the start, what would be your suggestions for a manga series for me to do like weekly reviews for after The Promised Neverland comes to an end? Like I said, Haikyuu or One Piece would be the 2 I'd be leaning towards. But if you have any other suggestions, let me know. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.